If I was to ask you to think about a memorable Mazda that wasn't an MX-5 or an RX-7, could you do it? And here's the thing, because there's been loads of brilliant Mazdas over the years. The original RX-7 went up against the Porsche 924, but of course instead of saying, well, we're going to come along with a big capacity 4-cylinder engine, Mazda put a small capacity Wankel rotary engine. And then when the 944 came out, they countered it by turbocharging the RX-7. And then of course, when Lancia came out with the Delta Integrale, this all-wheel drive, all-conquering rally car, Mazda went, all right then, have this. Here's the 323 all-wheel drive turbo, which not only took the fight to them on the rally stage, but also on the showrooms and the road. And then when all Retmobiles were going turbocharged diesels, Mazda went, we're not going to do that. We're going to supercharge a diesel engine, and gave us the Mazda 626 supercharged diesel. When Volkswagen did the Golf VR6, what did Mazda do? They stuck a sweet little V6 in the 323F, a swoopy little fastback 5-door that made the Golf look staid and, well, a bit boring if I'm honest with you. And then of course, there is the MX-5. When everyone started chasing hot hatches, Mazda went, no, we're going to reinvent the sports car. And it's still the world's best-selling sports car of all time, and still the benchmark by which all others are judged. And look at the coupes, the MX-3, the MX-6, the RX-8. Well, now they've done an electric car, and true to form, they're not doing it the way everyone else is doing it. Welcome to AutoEV. Now, before we get on to this week's review of the new Mazda MX-30, it is of course that time in the video, yes folks, where I tell you to like and subscribe and press the little bell button down there so you can receive notification of when the next video goes live. If you do that, we will be very, very grateful. So much so that we will probably invite you to this year's Christmas party at the AutoEV offices. So what exactly is the Mazda MX-30? Well, it is a small crossover SUV light type of car, but it's a bit more designed for the urban environment, a bit more lifestyle orientated, as much as I hate to use that expression. Confusingly, Mazda already do things like the CX-3, the CX-30 and the CX-5 SUVs. And whilst it doesn't replace any of those, it sits somewhere at the lower end of that scale. It's designed to compete with cars like the Honda E, the Mini Electric and Renault Zoe. And of course, styling first of all, and I think it looks absolutely fantastic. Look at this lovely negative space in here with the bonnet, sort of like nose cone sits here, this big prominent Mazda badge, these set way back headlights here, full LEDs across the range, you've got the lower black cladding here, little grille here, even just to aid the cooling, and more down here. Really distinctive, but wait till you see what's round the side. 3-door coupe? No, let's remember this is a Mazda. It's a 5-door. Now people say this is very similar to obviously what BMW have done with the i3, but Mazda have been here before. They did it with the RX-8, that brilliant little 4-door coupe they did way back in the noughties, long before the i3 was a glint in BMW's eye. Now these doors, they have a bit of a love it or loathe it style of thing with people. I personally do love them. I think they just add that little bit extra practicality of getting in and out the back. Mazda call them freestyle doors, but obviously some people say, well, what's the point? And obviously if this door closes, that one then can obviously hit it and damage, and we do have quite a windy day here. But generally, when you've got small kids, I think that's brilliant. And you can get it with quite a distinctive sort of 3-tone colour scheme here, with the black roof, the grey here, and then obviously the body colour here, or you can have it all the one colour if you like. I quite like this, if I'm being honest with you. And you've got the nice little Mazda inscription there. All cars come on the 18-inch alloy wheels as well, and they've got this sort of coupe-like presence to them that goes down to this sweeping fastback and a lovely big integrated rear spoiler. And then of course around the back you've got these fabulous lights that look like rockets coming out of here that just go into this rear wing. It's not pretty, it's not what you call a beautiful looking car, but it's really distinctive and it really cuts the dash and it's different to everything else that's out there. The boot space is very, very good. It's up to 366 litres. Now I say up to 366 litres because that depends on whether or not the car you have has fitted with the Bose sound system, because if it does, then it takes up the underfloor storage that's available. But it's still much bigger than the Honda E and the Mini Electric by a country mile, and you also get the 60-40 split rear seat. And as I said earlier, the rear seats are accessed via these freestyle doors, which you can tip and slide forward and get in the back. The rear accommodation is fine. Again, it's a slightly smaller car, so it's absolutely fine. Certainly for two people. I mean, it's got seatbelt anchoring for 3. I think you might be a little bit pushed with 3 in here, and you do have a slightly raised floor, which I'll talk about in a second. But certainly for 2 small children, it's absolutely fine, or medium-sized adults, it's okay. Footroom, well, again, it's sort of fine. I can't say there's any real problem. It's a bit tight, but you can raise obviously the front seat. Headroom's fine for me at my 5'7" height. I think if you were 6 foot, you'd struggle back here. The only downside is you do have these tiny small windows in the back as well, because obviously the structural rigidity of it, you've got to have quite thick pillars there. So there is a small amount of glass around you, which makes it feel slightly claustrophobic. Now, let's talk about these doors a little bit more, because there's no central B pillar. And if you're worried about safety, don't be, because the car gets an NCAP 5-star safety rating despite having no central door pillar. It's all integrated into the rear doors. And the interior is as distinctive as the exterior. What you have in here is this wonderful floating console design, which features a digital display here for your heating and ventilation controls. But thankfully, Mazda have also integrated in here actual physical controls for them. So they're duplicated. Don't know why, but they are. So that's absolutely fine as far as I'm concerned. But what I love about it is its innovative use of materials. Tops of the doors, they're recycled plastic bottles. And look at this. This is cork. Cork! I absolutely love this. Now, not only is it much more sustainable, and not only is it environmentally friendly because it comes from the offcuts of bottle stops, but it's a trade back to Mazda's heritage, because they started life back in the 1920s as a cork manufacturer. Who knew? Not me. Anyway, back to what we've got here, and it is a really, really nice design cockpit. You sit really well in these nice, comfortable, supportive seats, and depending on the spec that you get will depend on the materials that they're made of. This is a launch edition car, and like the top of the range car, it comes with this vegan leather as well. And on this one, it's a sort of two-tone. You've got the cloth and then half vegan leather. The top of the dash is done in this nice matte finish style material that's leather-like, that's really nice, doesn't reflect on the screen. You've got this big 8.8 inch infotainment screen up here, which is controlled by this down here, this rotary dial down here, much like a BMW iDrive controller. Much better than having a touch screen where you've got to really reach up here. It falls to hand, it's really easy to use, and yeah, it just flows really, really well. Your central instrument binnacle here also has a digital display, so you've got 2 analog dials flanked by that flank the central speedo, which you can change to be a conventional type of speedo or just display the speed in numerals. The wheel, nice little 3-spoke leather-like steering wheel, very reminiscent of the old 1970s Japanese sports car steering wheels you get. It's pleasingly round, it's got a nice girth to it, and all the controls just fall nice and easily to hand. And this particular car also has a sunroof as well, which is quite nice because it floods a lot of light into the car, which helps because it makes the front feel really quite airy. And now, of course, we get to the elephant in the room, and that is range. Now, the Mazda MX-30 has a 35.5 kilowatt hour battery, which Mazda say should give a WLTP range of around about 125 miles. So in reality, it's probably closer to 100 miles. Mazda call this right sizing. Now I know I've been a critic of this in the past, and I'm not really going to change tack now, so it's similar in range to the Mini Electric and the Honda E. But according to Mazda's research, this right sizing means that you're not carrying around a big heavy battery in a car that's only going to do small local journeys. According to Mazda, most customers of theirs do around about 26 miles a day average. So why carry around a big heavy battery that's going to impede into the dynamics of the car when you don't really need it? Now, of course, that's not going to suit everyone, and Mazda know that, and they're not suggesting that it will. And later this year, Mazda are also going to introduce a range extender version of the MX-30, which will allow a little petrol engine to charge up the battery. It won't power the car, but it will add in power into the battery. So is that going to be enough for you? Well, only you can decide that. As I say, I'm not going to change tack on it now. I still think it's a little bit disappointing. I mean, I've driven 80 miles to get here today to GridServe to do this road test, so it would be no good for me. I'd have to charge before I head back, which is a bit of a negative. But for the local commuting, your urban environment, and when we do what most people do, when you plug your mobile phone in overnight to charge it, you can do that from your 7 kilowatt wall box. If you do that, the MX-30 will take a charge, a full charge in about 6 hours. And from a 50 kilowatt CCS charger, you can go from 0 to 80% and run about 38 minutes. Now, the MX-30 produces 143 brake horsepower. So it's a little bit behind the Honda E, a good bit behind the Mini Electric, and on a par with the PSA Group cars that we've been testing of recent times. So performance is okay, let's just leave it at that, shall we? Not to 60s, closer to 10 seconds than it is to 9. And it feels quite brisk up to sort of like about 30-40 miles an hour, and then it doesn't seem to get any, you don't get that kind of huge slug of torque that you do with a lot of electric cars, or certainly doesn't feel it. Where it does win, however, in terms of its sort of like performance, is in the chassis department. Now this is quite odd because it has a torsion beam rear suspension setup, which, well, that's not particularly sophisticated. It's quite an old-fashioned type of system. But the way that Mazda seem to have tuned it, you only really notice it when the car's getting really out of shape or on really bad surfaces. Up until then, actually, it manages to sort of grip really well. So when you do get up to a speed like we've got on these sort of back roads today, you're able to carry that speed through the corner quite well. You can string a set of corners together in this little MX-30 and not really lift. It's got a nice level of grip. The steering has got good precision. You know exactly where the wheels are put. I mean, it's light. I mean, it's a nice light steering, but it has feel behind it. So it doesn't kind of let you down when you want to get a bit of a hustle on. It's quite impressive. I mean, as you'd expect from a company that gave us something like the MX-5. But it really does surprise you how well you're able to sort of like carry speed through the corner. The other thing that's nice in here is the driving position. You get a really nice driving position. Now in this particular spec car, which is the launch edition, we've got the electric seats. But they're really nice. They hold you, you know, without pinching you sort of like at the sides, so you don't roll around in them. But they've got a nice level of sort of like comfort about them. You know, the steering wheel's got a nice feel to it. It's a nice round wheel. It's got the right level of sort of like the thickness to it, which is nice. You know, it's thin spoked. It looks like a proper old-fashioned sort of like Japanese sports steering wheel from the 1970s, which I absolutely love. And you've got the little minor controls on it too. Pedals are placed nicely. The dashboard itself, as we saw earlier, you know, everything's clear. You can set up the instrument binnacle sort of like how you like it. You've got the big digital display in the center and sort of like the analog ones at the side. Everything's clear. Everything just feels sort of shrink wrapped around you in a good way. You don't feel claustrophobic. You don't feel this it's too tight in here, but it's just nice. The only downside, and it goes back to those rear doors, which I really like, is your over-the-shoulder visibility is, well, it's quite poor if I'm honest with you. There's tiny little windows at the back. There's a big thick C-pillar at the back, which you can't really sort of, like, you know, it gives you a bit of a blind spot. And it's the same when you're over the shoulder view here, this thick pillar, because obviously without that central B pillar where it's actually integrated into the door, it's much thicker. So that's a little bit of the trade-off for having those sort of like quirky doors. You've just got to just give it that little second glance in the mirror. Don't rely on your over the shoulder stuff. But other than that, it's really, really nice in here in terms of the driving environment. I don't know if the microphone will pick it up, but when you accelerate, it's got like this little noise which is quite quirky. It's not the sort of like the electric noise that you get with some cars. It almost feels like a sort of, I don't know, a thrummy little 3-cylinder engine somewhere in the car, which is quite nice. I quite like that. It's quite quirky. But yeah, the throttle response is good. You know, you get a good throttle response from it, and as I say, it's like the steering. There's a nice weight behind it. There's a nice feel to it. It seems just right. They've got it really well honed, I think. The brakes are quite good as well, and you can adjust the brake regeneration via the 2 paddles behind the steering wheel. So you can take it off completely, you know, here, so that it's left to coast, which is quite nice. And then obviously that's the sort of, you know, that helps you with your efficiency a little bit. When you're on sort of like open roads, you just coast along rather than braking all the time. You don't have to be on power all the time. Or you can max it up via the other paddle. Now that's quite nice again if you've got sort of like, you know, little twisty roads that you're sort of like enjoying your drive. That just helps you again without, it's not quite the one pedal drive, but by just lifting slightly, it gives you that nice little bit of sort of almost engine braking, which means that you can just get the corner set up just nicely. And as I say, you can string a set of bends together really, really well. The ride quality is good too. You know, all cars come on the 18-inch alloy wheels, but it's got a really nice ride quality to the car. The whole thing feels solid, and in a good way. It feels that Mazda have put a lot of effort into the refinement of the car, and obviously regular viewers will know that I really admire that. I like, you know, sports cars are sports cars. I don't particularly want that all the time in other type of cars, but in this, it's just got that nice sort of like, you know, you're away from all the sort of like external noises coming into the car aren't there. The whole thing feels solid on the road, and I think that's a really good quality to have. I like it. I think they've done well with this. I think this is a great car to drive, and it's surprisingly so. I wasn't sure what to expect with it, with the sort of body style, that kind of compact crossover style. And as I say, having owned you know, a couple of MX-5s, it's going to sound a bit odd, but you can almost feel the originalities, the you know, the DNA through it. It's good. I like it. It's a lot of fun for something that's not as quick as some, you know, as the Mini Electric, which is, again, is, you know, if you're a regular viewer will know I absolutely love. This is surprisingly, this is good. Yeah, I like it. Well done. Now the MX-30 is priced really competitively in the marketplace. The range starts with the SEL Lux at £25,500. Now that price is after the current UK plug-in car grant of £3,000 is taken into account, which is applicable at time of filming. But even as the base car, it still gets LED headlamps, it still gets 18-inch alloy wheels, it still gets Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, and a host of usual safety features such as lane keep assist, radar guided cruise control, and blind spot monitoring. You then move up to the Sport Lux model, which adds on a few extra bits and pieces, and that comes in at £27,500 after the UK grant. And then the top of the range GT Sport Tech, which has everything thrown at it, and that's coming in at under £30,000, at around about £29,800 after the grant. So again, a hugely competitive car. Now Mazda hope to sell around about 2,500 of the MX-30s in the UK every year, and the first 500 of those are going to be these first edition cars, which is a sort of cross between a few of the bits and pieces you get between the mid-range and the top of the range car, and that's coming in at just under the £28,000 mark. But later in the year, Mazda are also going to introduce a range extender one of these, where a small capacity petrol engine can be used to charge the battery up. And I can't help but feeling that's a little bit of a backward step. So what other cars might you be considering when looking at something like the Mazda MX-30? Well, of course, we've said all along, Mazda see this competition for this car in coming from the likes of the Mini Electric, the Fiat 500e and the Honda E. But of course, between £25,000 and £30,000, you've also got the likes of the Renault Zoe, the Peugeot E2A and the Vauxhall Corsa Electric, albeit they're going to trade range and practicality for being a little bit more mainstream and perhaps not quite as distinctive and lifestyle orientated or as well specified as the Mazda. So here's what we like and what we don't like about the new Mazda MX-30. We like the exterior and interior styling. Its brilliant and brave and innovative choice of interior materials, the refinement, its excellent chassis, and the value for money it represents. We don't like there's an argument that the range is too limited, and performance lacks some of its rivals. And also the rear seat space is a little bit tight for taller people. So what are we to make of the Mazda MX-30 in summary? Have they built another brilliant car? Yes, they have. Would I have it over the Honda E? No. The Honda's just too damn stylish and too much fun for me to ignore. But what about the Mini Electric? Is it better than the Mini? Well, if performance and outright dynamics are what you're looking for, then perhaps the Mini still has the edge. But if you're not fussed about that, and maybe you just want a little bit more interior space, or dare I say, something a bit more distinctive and less familiar than the Mini, then you'd be a fool to yourself not to consider the MX-30. It's great value for money, it's really fun to drive, and it's no more limiting in range than the other two cars are. Yep, they've done it again. They deserve your attention with this car. Thank you for watching AutoEV. As always, please remember to like and subscribe to the channel. It's really important that you do, because it does keep us going and it makes sure that we keep giving you content that you want. Add some comments down below, good or bad, about my fashion sense or bizarre hair these days. And if you haven't been to the AutoEV website, then you really need to go there. It's autoev.co.uk, where there's a library, a catalogue of videos of road test reviews. Unfortunately, most of them are featuring me, but hey, you can't have everything. Thanks again, and we'll see you again soon. So, you've watched our video. It's now my job to tell you to like and subscribe, and press the little bell button to receive notification of when our next video is uploaded.